Have you been thinking about adding a variegated monstera to your house or your collection? With so many options these days in terms of what variegated monstera to go for, I dive into the ones that I own or have owned and give you my 2 cents. Hi, my name is Memo. This is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me. It's tropical houseplants. So before I even dive into the topic of variegated monsteras, variegation as a whole, is it still relevant? I know there was a point a few years back where everybody wanted a variegated plant, whether it's a monstera, whether it's another type of plant. Everybody was searching for variegated plants. Is that still the case? Are you still looking occasionally for a variegated plant, or are you just kind of going for the non-variegated, usually green version of plants? Let me know down below. But yeah, diving into the topic for this week, and again, I don't know which of the 2 videos will come out this week, but I'm going to do 2 videos and they're both going to be on variegation. So if you don't like variegation, you don't want to hear about variegation, this week might be a bit of a bust for you, basically. Or me, considering the fact that probably not that many people are going to watch it. But you know what? Let's dive into the variegated monsteras. I have got some of my variegated monsteras in front of me here. Some of the larger varieties, I will add pictures or videos during that different section of the video. But I will only talk about the variegated monsteras that I have owned, do own, and have grown, because I can talk from experience in that respect. So yeah, without further ado, let's dive into it. So the people that have been here for a while will probably know that I do have several different variegated monsteras, and I think I have got them all today. But let's start with the recent addition to the collection, shall we? These, by the way, are in no particular order. So the variegated Monstera Adansonii, the white variegated monstera, even though it does look a bit cream, if I'm showing to you whilst everything drips, which I recently added to my collection, eagle-eyed, and people that know, I've put it on a moss pole. Look, 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 I put it on a moss pole. And to be fair, I think I've started with one of the strongest contenders. For however much I did not want to like this specific plant, I always knew that the white variegated sectoral kind of Adansonii was always going to be more of my jam rather than the other 2 that I'm going to show you in just a bit. But the reality is that true? Yes. I think I'm still enjoying this more than any of the other variegated monsteras, Adansonii, that I have got. So why? You might be asking why. I prefer the creamy kind of sectoral variegation, but that is a personal preference. Also, I will say that when I first got this plant a few weeks ago now, it's not even that old of a plant, it was probably only 3 leaves, maybe 4. If I find a picture from my plant care app, I will add it here. If not, sorry. But it's grown exceptionally well. It's under a grow light and it's doing quite well. I specifically chose it, and I'm not going to touch on how to choose variegated plants. And I would always recommend, if you can with variegated plants, the online sellers are going to hate me now. My personal preference would be go and see it in a shop and buy it from there, because you can choose which variegated plant, whether it's a monstera or any other variegated plant. For me, that's a better option because I can choose ones without too much variegation, or ones that have got some decent variegation rather than very, very little. Usually when you order online, you're at the whims of whoever's packaging your plant. And just to be clear as well, because I've spoken to a few of the online sellers, a lot of the times the people that are packing, not every time, but a lot of the times the people that are packing plants aren't really plant people or plant enthusiasts in the best, so they're just like, this is good enough, put it in. There is no more thought behind it, so don't take it too personally. But yeah, I enjoy the variegation to this. It has been super, super, super fast. Like insane, like how quickly this has all grown. Granted, this is growing underneath a grow light. That's a relatively decent grow light. I think I have got this in Soil Ninja's Anthurium mix, and it's doing really, really well. It's rooting in the back of the moss pole. I can see it, although I can see it attaching higher. I can only see the roots on the transparent back of the moss pole at the very bottom, but that's probably because they haven't grown enough. But so far it's good. It's keeping its variegation. It's not going too crispy. You can see some of the oldest leaves here where the white is a bit more prevalent. Hopefully the white is coming up a bit more there. Then you can see that more creamy, like, it's a good thing I wore a white top today so that you can see the difference in the white there, and you can see that's more white there on the older ones. But you can and you will still get that browning on the variegated section. Now, I'm gonna burst everybody's bubble early on. It is very, very difficult, not impossible, to keep variegated sections on most Monstera leaves, in my experience, pristine. So bear that in mind going in. You might have some brown bits on your white bits. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. As long as you're okay with that, and if you don't get it, and even if you're a hovering plant parent, good on you, but expect that you're going to get some browning on your white bits. Now, I've got quite a few of the Adansonii in front of me. Let's not do an Adansonii. Let's do a Deliciosa-esque Monstera. So, picture, hopefully, or video, of my Albo variegated Monstera. I know some people are not calling it Borsigiana, but I bought it as an Albo Borsigiana Monstera with like the white sections basically, and I had two of these, and hopefully I will show you a picture of my second one here. Now, a bit of a backstory with both of these. The more variegated one I bought, how did I buy that? I can't even remember how that came into my collection. No, I do remember how that came into my collection. I'll touch on that. Let's talk about the less variegated Monstera first, because that was the first one I added to my collection, and it was nerve-wracking because that's nearly 6 years old as a plant now, I think. It was when variegated Monsteras were first coming onto the scene, and this specific plant, there was an amazing, I can't remember who the Instagrammer is anymore. I don't see them that often online, maybe it's just Instagram being weird, but they had multiple, based in London, multiple variegated Monsteras in their apartment. And it was a lady, if I'm not mistaken, with big curly red hair. Not originally from the UK, that's kind of all that I remember. And she chopped up one of her plants and she was selling single leaf node cuttings to people that wanted to buy, and I think it was like a silent auction, and I got it and I put in a really low bid going, I'm probably not going to get it. It was those days it was going ridiculously for a lot, and I listened to what everybody was saying and don't go for too much variegation. I went for one that had the smallest amount of variegation, which is probably why you'll see on that plant there's not an awful lot of white, but it did well, it rooted, it was fine. But having said that though, I did want one that had more chunks of white variegation, and I did get that one, my second Albo Monstera. And I'll call them Albo Monsteras for now because I don't know what the dealio is about the Borsigianas. Like at this point, I'm beyond that initial honeymoon phase that everybody gets when they get a new plant, because it's 5 or 6 years later. I'm just like, it's my white variegated Monstera. No. That's all that I need to know. The more sectoral variegated one I got, and I was able to choose, I think. And I went and picked it up from Sarah at Eastern Tropicals. And Sarah, if you ever see this video, hi! And for people that might not know, Eastern Tropicals is one that you definitely need to check out. I will add the link at the top there. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Sarah kind of started her online plant business way back when, and I think she predominantly started with Albo Monsteras, and now she does a whole host of different tropical houseplants. But she started on those, so I kind of went to this amazing property. She's since moved, but I remember like loads of kind of rooting cuttings of Monstera Albo, and I don't think it was that expensive either. And the quality of care that Sarah gives to her plants is absolutely insane. Anybody who watches this who has dealt with Sarah can probably vouch for this. We all love Sarah. But yes, so I got that plant from her, I rooted it out, grew it out. It's taken a while, I will say. Both of my Albo Monsteras, even the one with the less variegation, they are slow. They are slow. I have always found them slow. I've always grown them in high humidity situations with filtered light. Some of the pictures that you might be seeing from both of these monsteras might have some leaf burn because maybe sometimes they get a bit too much light, but I find it's not necessarily a problem. But yes, they are great plants, and back then and even now, I think they're a fantastic plant for you to learn how to deal with unstable variegation by chopping green sections and leaving it back to the variegated, and hopefully that variegation will come back and rinse and repeat essentially. So yes, and I'm aware these days that for a price of what we used to get for one semi-decent Albo Monstera node cutting with one leaf, you can pretty much more or less buy a whole plant these days, so which is great. I think it's a beautiful plant, and I think it deserves to be in people's houses. The reality with both of these plants, or Monstera Albos generally, and I would love to hear your opinions on this, please do so down below in the comments. I have only ever grown it in high humidity situations, and I have mentioned the browning on the white sections. Never more so than a Monstera Albo, and that I'm getting in a very humid environment, trying to give it as optimal conditions as possible. It doesn't happen as often, and I am able to keep white sections kind of almost entirely perfect. How is it in a household condition? Like, I would love this plant, and I think everybody bought it thinking they were going to eventually have, and that takes a while. Let's not lie to ourselves. It takes a while unless you get like a full plant. And to be fair, at some point, possibly when I buy my next house and move away from this one, where I'll have better conditions, better lighting situations, I might get it as a full plant and get it somewhere in my house just to enjoy. My worry with that is that everything's white's just going to go brown. Tell me your experiences. I don't have those experiences because I have never dared to do that. Let me know if that's the case, or eventually if the plant just stabilizes and just goes, yeah, this is where I live now. The humidity isn't fantastic, but it's fine. I'm not going to go brown all the time. So that was my Albo Monstera, the large one, not large, but you know what I mean. I think there is a Monstera Deliciosa Albo, which might be different because they've got bigger leaves. I might be wrong. I'm fully aware that there are so many varieties, I want to say, because I don't think any one of specifically is a species. I don't know if it would be just because it's variegated basically, but I think there's the white monster or the white goat and the white monster, I think. There's loads, and I can't remember. Oh, there's an amazing YouTuber, I'll add up the top there, based in like the Far East basically. And they did something recently on their Instagram, I think I saw that, where they were showing a whole bunch of variegated monsteras, and it was just like, oh wow, look at all the different types of variegated monsteras. Now it's great. And the reason behind this, I know I'm kind of still talking about the Albo, but the reason behind this is because I think a lot of these plants, because there was such a demand for it, there was a lot of people that heavily got into tissue culturing this. So they got different forms with more or less variegation and different patterns of variegation as well. So very, very cool. I think a lot of those ones that are very, very specific are still quite expensive. So, but yes, coming back into the variegated Adansonii, and I'm gonna leave the worst one for last. And anybody who's seen a specific review will know probably which one's coming up. My opinion has not changed on that one. But let's have a look at another Adansonii variegata, which is, and it might not come up that well on the camera, hopefully it will. It's also getting blown out because the grow light is particularly bright with it, but hopefully if I bring that in close enough you might be able to see another moss pole. I know, I am proud of me too. This one again doesn't look like it's particularly attaching. It's attached, like I can see the roots going into the moss pole, but it hasn't started speeding up too much. You might be able to see some chunks missing from the leaves. I don't know what caused that. I think it's some form of pest, but it's not the usual thrips, spider mites, mealybugs, da 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 da. I think at some point I had a slug or a snail in here, and it might have been munching. Anybody else have those situations where you do get the occasional slug or snail in your collection, and maybe they've munched on a few leaves? considering how prolific they are at my allotment, I would hazard a guess that they don't particularly enjoy munching on these plants. I might be wrong, because mine usually it's just very, very small sections of damage, but that's it. Well, a lot of my allotment plants are decimated almost overnight. Is that the case with you? Have you ever had slugs or snails? Do you get that situation where they only have a little nibble and then go away and you've got left with some horrendous looking holes? Or have you lost entire plants to slugs or snails? I know it's a very specific and random question, but I'd be curious. Let me know. But yeah, this one, I'm going to agree, and I know that I'm probably not the only one. I also know that I'm probably going to get some hate with this. With Kaylee Ellen, this looks diseased. And you're going to be asking, why did you buy a plant when you already thought that the plant looked diseased? Because the reality was, and I think it's because maybe there's not as many people buying the kind of marbly, speckly, minty varieties. This was cheap. This was like a $5, I think. Maybe £7, and it was a baby plant, but still I was just like, you know what, for that price. And I had the horrendous one that I'll show you in a bit before I got this one, and before I got the Albo one that I showed in the very beginning. I'm just like, you know what, why not? I might come to love it. The variegation isn't even that prevalent. I get the speckling of the thing, and it looks sick. It does look sick. I mean, does anybody else think this looks thick? Sick. Words. Whilst I poo-poo on a plant, you know, as you do. But yeah, I mean, it's okay, and it grows okay, and you might be able to notice this. Did this have thrips at some point? Yes. Did it decimate it? No. I'm trying to think if there's any more thrips on here. Maybe. Yeah, like I've had like the full spectrum of pests this year. Like this summer, anybody who's in the UK knows that I'm using the word summer to describe whatever it is we've been having for the last month and a half. It's a joke within itself, the fact that I'm using the word summer. More like autumn number 4 or 5 at this point. Yeah. I've had all the pests this growing season, not summer technically. I have literally had thrips, spider mites, mealybugs, whitefly, and just to really drive me over the edge, scale, which I've never had before. And obviously, as you can see, possibly some slugs, because slugs this year and the wetness that we've been having in the UK. And I know that it's been warm everywhere else in the world. Please do everybody from the UK a very tiny favour and don't remind us that we're having a shocking summer. Sorry, off topic. But yes, it's okay. It's okay. I don't hate it, but it's okay. I mean, it looks diseased. There's not much more I can say about it, basically. Right, and the next one, I do not have it here because it's getting quite large and it's upstairs in my office, but I will add a picture here. Oh, I still love this plant. It's slow. It is, I will hazard a guess and say, well, even hazard a guess, I'm going to be very blunt with it. This is the slowest variegated Monstera I have ever owned, the Monstera Constellation. It does not negate the fact that it is beautiful, and hopefully I will get a picture before it browns of the newest leaf. Oh my god! Amazing! That one I am growing in an office. The humidity level isn't that great. It gets very warm in that space. Does it get the best light? No. Does that mean it's probably going a bit slower? Yes. When it was growing in here and it was taking up way too much space, it did grow a bit better. The brown bits didn't brown as the white bits didn't, or cream bits didn't brown as much. Although I do think it's stabilized now. It is also getting whacked by Duke's tail on a regular basis. So for the people that are new, Duke is my lab basically, and very excitable, very waggy tail. But yes, so the leaves get whipped on a regular basis in that room. But yeah, I mean, it was faster in here, benchmarking it again. And I think I've done a review. I'll add the review at the top just so you can see a bit more. Like, maybe in the growing season, because that plant almost entirely stops, both in here and up in my kind of office, almost entirely stops from October time, at least here in the UK, for me, all the way until at least May, I would say. So you've not got a very long growing period, but during that growing period, maybe 2 or 3 leaves. I think 3 or maybe 4 is the most I used to get in here. And I will say something else as well. Mine are relatively large, more mature form of leaves now, and it has got slower. So it was faster when it was a bit more juvenile when I got it, and it was never truly juvenile. It is great that I'm seeing a lot more of these come out in the market. I actually saw one today. I went to the garden centre. You would be so proud of me though. I did not buy a single plant. I bought soil, but I did not buy a single plant. I don't know if that's should I be bragging? I don't know. Sorry, off topic. But I did see some baby Thai constellations, which I don't think were that expensive, maybe 20 quid, so it's not too bad. And I don't think I got mine for, I think that mine was probably about 4 times that, so maybe 80 back when I got it, but it was relatively sizable, and then it got really expensive again, and then the prices coming again. It's all over the place. But, and also I'm curious with my American audience, has it become more available there? The Costa Farm debacle, I don't know if that ever got resolved or if there's other people that are generally selling it and it's become a bit more available in America, because there was a huge demand and no supply there. So let me know. I'm curious, is that still a thing? But yeah, it's slow, but it's still beautiful. I'm trying to think now if I would choose that over my Monstera Albo, the more variegated one. I don't know, I think they're on par. I'd prefer my Monstera Albo purely for the fact that I prefer the white variegation over the cream, and it's also that tiniest of bit faster. So, but still a solid plant. You don't have to worry, it's not unstable. I'm saying things that most people have said before. It's not unstable variegation, but it also means because it's not unstable variegation, it is one of those things that is kind of like, you might get a few really kind of like disappointing leaves, especially when you have to wait for them for that long. And then eventually when you get one with loads of cream on it, you're just like, oh, and then you watch it go brown. The realities. Slaps you in the face every time. But yeah, it's still a beautiful plant. I don't know if anybody knows the kind of history on this plant. And this is, again, hearsay that I've heard from certain growers that I don't know if you know how tissue culture works, and yes, before you say that, I think this winter might be the winter that I attempt tissue culture. I've been wanting to do it for a while. It's a lot of money to invest in it in the very beginning and just to play around with, but I think I'm going to do it this year. I think. Hold me to it. Hold me to it. I might even take you all along for the journey, and then I can kind of update you as I go along, because a lot of people find it still very foreign as a concept. So my scientific background and my scientific little child brain is going, whoa, playing with things again. It's great. Hopefully these times they don't explode. But yeah, it is one that as far as I've heard, somebody was trying and just kind of tissue culturing plants, and it kind of came up as a natural kind of variant, and then they kind of tissue cultured that to death essentially, and then that's how we got the Monstera Thai Constellation. And I would imagine it was probably like somebody in Thailand. I would guess based on the name. But yeah, Monstera Thai Constellation, fantastic plant, if slow basically. Should we end on a high or a miserable low? Let's. So some people might have already guessed this. This is the Monstera. Still looking busted. I'll leave the review there. It hasn't got any better. The Monstera Adansonii Aurea variegated. And I've got a new leaf. I've got a new leaf coming through. Should I potentially chop and prop this? Probably. I might even do that after this video, just because I want to see if I can actually get this to grow okay, because I don't think a lot of you that do own this have said that they've had particularly bad experiences with this. I think mine's just really, really rubbish. But I had to leave it last because, I mean, that leaf there, right there, that is beautiful. There's a lot of the Aurea and not very much green. The thing I will say about this, because I think is a Polaroid variegation if I'm not mistaken, where it kind of comes in and it's all green. You might be able to notice that from that newest leaf. I'm trying to do this in a way that you might be able to see it. It kind of looks all green, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be all green. It means that it's probably going to have some variegation. This one here that looks very light, you might think it's sun bleached, but actually if I turn it around, and hopefully you might be able to see, can you see the tiniest bit of green there? This is entirely kind of yellow. So not a great thing, but there's also like the variegation on the stem, the candy caning on this is very heavily leaning on the yellow side of things, which is probably why this plant has always been a bit busted for me. The reason I also want to chop and prop this is because I do want to give this a moss pole and see if it makes any difference. I have been growing this in semi-hydro. The roots are looking okay. But yes, I think I might just chop it, move this into maybe a soil media, get loads of nodes, pop them in a propagation box and see what happens. And possibly the top bit, I'll try to... The correct thing for me to do here, and this is why I stopped talking just now, would be to do something like air layering and let this root out into some damp sphagnum moss so I can just chop it and move it immediately. Do I care enough about this plant to do that? Probably not. Probably not. If I'm being completely honest, probably not. So I'll see what happens. But yes, in my experience, my worst variegated Monstera might not be just because it's an Aurea or a yellow variegated Adansonii. I still like the look of it when it's doing okay. I don't mind it, but it's just never grown particularly, I mean, it's never grown particularly well. And I got this again. Some people might be asking, why in God's name did you get this? I just kind of found this for cheap again. Same garden centre that I found the Albo Adansonii, same one. I found the diseased looking like mint one. They all had it and they were all relatively cheap. I think this one was probably like under 2 digits. This one was slightly more expensive still, but I don't think I ever shared how much I paid for this. I think this was maybe 10 or 12 pounds. So it's not too bad, to be fair. Considering how much this specific one type of Adansonii was going for. Yeah, I mean, these were cheap. These, as I said, under 2 digits. But yeah, am I underwhelmed or am I just whelmed? Maybe I'm just whelmed with this one. I'm underwhelmed with the mint one. I really am. I wasn't expecting much, but even that, disappointing. My opinion, my preferences, do with that as you will. So what did you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'm trying to think if I've left any variegated Monstera out of the equation that I have owned. I don't think I have. I've never owned the Siltepecana, I think it is. I've wanted the Siltepecana. I have held back every single time. It comes across very, very often, which is a good sign, as rooted cuttings at a lot of the plant swaps, which to me would suggest that it's relatively easy and fast growing. I might be wrong, correct me. But I also see its growth pattern and I'm just like, I don't have the space for that at the moment. I would like that to get huge, but I don't have the space for it. I do not want to have it in here. I don't have the space for that. And I don't have the space in the house anymore to let it kind of do what it needs to do with enough light for it to do what it needs to do. But those are the ones that I can think of. I'm probably going to kick myself in editing and just maybe give you another list of like a whole bunch of ones that I've maybe missed out. But as I said, these are the ones that I have grown so I can talk from experience. Have I missed one? I'm sure I have. Let me know down below. And do you agree with some of my assessments for these things? I'd be curious to find out. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.